10 things AAA games need to bring back. What do they need to bring back? Let's see.
AAA games is a place where trends are followed and stuff gets dropped pretty often. Sometimes it's good that they get rid of something annoying, like, I don't know, like crypto stuff in games. Not many people are doing that anymore, but there are also things that they drop that we miss. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 10 things AAA games need to bring back. Starting off with number 10, bring back taking risks with established franchises. Nowadays, it really feels like AAA publishers are playing it way too safe with their established franchises. Instead of ever trying to do anything new and innovative, they take the path of least resistance to do the boring, expected thing rather than something surprising. And when I say the boring, expected thing, I don't mean making another game, like just throwing some new levels together. That's not playing it safe.
I mean, I will say, like, he's right. Like, a lot of these developers, they just take the safe route. I mean, but when they do try something new, like, sometimes it turns out good, sometimes it doesn't. So it's like, because sometimes these developers just don't know what the players want and what would be good in their game, So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, should they try something new, or keep doing the same thing they're doing? I mean, I like when they try something new and it works out. Like, they just need to pay attention, like listen to the community and see, like for example, Call of Duty. Well, we all know they have like what, 3 different developers on COD, and sometimes this one developer will put something new in the game and everybody love it. It'd be really fucking cool. Then next game we won't have it. Well, like, hey, y'all need to communicate. Like, at least, like, maybe not the developer right after that game. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe the third developer, hey, talk to this developer who just came out with a game, and try to put some of the features that people like into your game. I'm just saying. But yeah.
Actually, nowadays, sometimes that can be really good. Playing it safe usually isn't. I mean, playing it safe like, oh, we'll make a game that's hopping onto this trend. Let us do what the other games publishers are doing. Now, that's not to say we're not getting the prequels and reboots that are meant to be like the old games or straight up remakes. Those are safe too.
See, my problem is he had Suicide Squad up here, and did it seem the that genre of looter shooter, but they didn't really take a lot from good looter shooters, like Warframe or Destiny. I'm a big Destiny 2 player. It just didn't take that. Like, the thing I have the problems I have with like these developers trying to get into like the looter space, they just don't know what they're doing, and it blows my mind because we have all these other games that are like looter shooters or whatever, and they just don't take what these other developers learned and use it in their game. Like for Suicide Squad, for example, like when you get your characters, like, and the gear on it, like none of the gear, like you get these like reactors and stuff, whatever. I can't remember what they're called, but you don't see your progression on your characters. Am I making sense right now? Like, let's say for Destiny 2, like, when you're getting powerful because of the gear you're getting, and if you don't like how the gear looks, you can transmog it. Same with like Diablo, you get all the gear you get, it's your progression. You look like a level 1, it's gonna look way different from like a level, um I don't know, 80, 100 in like Diablo. A new player it's gonna look way different than a veteran player in Destiny 2 because it has progression. The Adventures had the same problem. Like it's cool, like you want to release cosmetics and make your character look different, but still have like that visual progression. I hope I'm making sense. Because, I mean, there's a lot of problems wrong with Suicide Squad. The end game sucked ass. You know, we just, I mean, the whole Brainiac system, boss fights and stuff. I mean, you're just facing like the Flash, Superman, Green Lantern. I mean, it was like nothing new. It was boring, but the progression and the visual progression didn't help it out either.
The other games publishers are doing. Now, that's not to say we're not getting the prequels and reboots that are meant to be like the old games or straight up remakes. Those are safe too. They are proven to be successful and they'll very likely make at least a little bit of money. You just don't see that many sequels that are really challenging anymore. Like Metal Gear Solid 2, for instance, like Sons of Liberty is such a left field. We're going to bait you into thinking this is a normal sequel, and then you're literally not Solid Snake. In fact, we're going to play at the guy who is obviously Solid Snake not being Solid Snake and kind of pretending that he's possibly dead, but he's not. Iroquois Pliskin, he's obviously Solid Snake. Come on, man.
My name is Pliskin. Iroquois Pliskin, Lieutenant Junior Grade.
Or like, something totally out of left field like Far Cry 2. There's a reason for that, of course. Both of those games were, and in some circles still are, pretty divisive. But I'm going to argue that Metal Gear Solid 2, aside from Metal Gear Solid 1, is the one I go back to the most. That may not be normal, I don't know. And Far Cry 2, I definitely go back to more than Far Cry 1. Hell, more than most of the games that follow it. It's a better game. It's not easy on the eyes compared to how one is today, but it's better. But there's good ways and bad ways to do this sort of thing. Like, as much as Banjo Nuts and Bolts disappoints fans of that series, it's actually a pretty decent game. It's not the sequel a lot of people wanted it to be, but also they, I think, should have maybe tried to establish better expectations. I think that's a large element of negative reaction to a risk. Not only does sometimes they not set expectations for something different, or say like it's a side game, or if it is a sequel, just, letting people know that it requires an open mind a little bit more than the last one, or in a different way. I think one of the big problems is some of these developers actually get hostile at the idea that people won't like these changes, and they start fights with the fans. Sometimes publishers do that with the developers not even saying a word. That particularly sucks. And there is,
Yeah, it's a lot of them like who get very like hostile because we don't like to change it, especially in a established franchise. Like he showed DMC that Devil May Cry that was made by fucking what's that developer? Let me know in the comments. I can't remember. But what we had like when did that come out? Did that come out after Devil May Cry 3 or before? I can't remember. We either had like 2 or 3 games in that franchise that, well, if it came out, you know, after like Devil May Cry, I mean, well, I can't remember. Let me check real quick. So, DMC Devil May Cry came out 2013. Oh yeah, so we already had Devil May Cry 3 then. So we already had 2 games in that 3 games in that franchise. One wasn't that really um well received that loved. I really didn't like Devil May Cry 2, but Devil May Cry 1 was a classic. Game was amazing, and Devil May Cry 3 was really good. So when they made that DMC Devil May Cry with the whole new aesthetic and the new redesign for Dante, yeah, it wasn't really that loved. You can't really take these big franchises that people love. I mean, some developers can, and build upon it and make it better or whatever, but that's not all the time. So I understand why some developers are kind of like iffy to like really innovate on games, but you know, it's nice to see them try at least. And if it doesn't turn out good, don't do shit again. All right?
Real danger in taking risks with an established IP, especially with large vocal groups of players using weaponized discontent to possibly damage a game's sales. We are not in the same world anymore. Like, you used to be able to make a game, usually when people wanted a game, and it would sell. Now you make the game, you have to market demand for that game into existence. I mean, you still used to have to do that, but it wasn't because of market saturation. It was more because you were making a new type of game that took risks. But the thing is, the fans can also market discontent into existence too. Companies are definitely balancing a lot of plates when they put out a new game, especially one that would take any risks. So a lot of them just consider potential backlash and say, best way to mitigate this is to just go as predictable as we can, follow a trend, not try anything new, blah, blah, blah. Which sucks because that's just a way to produce an endless feedback loop where companies keep finding more excuses to make boring sequels and probably my least favorite version of this, chasing the games as a service model. That's maybe not considered as safe as it was a year or two ago. They all thought that was the safe bet. They were wrong about that. Anyway, the industry is getting hurt as a whole here. We're starting to reach a point where
Game as a service, live service games, they are not bad. The model isn't bad. The games are just bad, if that makes sense. There's plenty of games out there that are live service games or games of a service that are good and people like. We just don't like bad games with a live service elements tacked onto them. Look at MMOs. Those games are basically live service games. I mean, not every MMO is good and loved, but a lot of them are. Warframe, a live service game that is loved. Destiny 2, another one. We just don't like bad games with live service tacked onto it because it's a bad game. We're not going to play it either way. Like,
where AAA gameplay barely feels like it's meant for new audiences, because all these publishers are just trying to court old fans, or if they are trying to court new fans, it's not really because they think their series is good, but rather because they think a new business model is good. But the thing is, there's one Fortnite. There's not 100 Fortnites. There's not exactly a lot of room at that table for other people. AA games are usually where you see the most innovation in any era, but AAA games really did used to have some of the more interesting and innovative games. And we don't really see that anymore. They're usually very easy to digest, very safe, and, very bland. I mean, that's generally speaking. Obviously, not every single AAA game is lacking in innovation or interesting new ideas. Like, the 2 new God of War games were probably a pretty big risk, and it worked out pretty well, I think. Obviously, the first was the bigger risk over the second. Changing the gameplay of the entire series to something different, that's a big risk, and it worked out, and those games are great. But
it worked out
in general,
wonderful.
the industry seems to be pretty scared of doing anything new and unique, though, especially with established franchises. And number 9 is just bringing back creativity with new IPs. Like, look at Sony's output from PlayStation 1 compared to the PlayStation 5. It's night and day. They were publishing so many unique, oddball games, just stuff that maybe had limited financial value at the time. Some of them were bad games, too, but they were interesting. They were attempts at something. Sony had a far-reaching and varied catalog of games to draw from back then, but now they kind of just have a few tentpole billion-dollar series, and that's about it. Compare Sony's 2024 release catalog.
Yeah, look at that. It was cut. One reason we don't get like these many games is because the budget for these games are so high. Like how much did they spend on Concord? What was it, like 400 million? That's a lot because they already put like what, 200 million before Sony came in and put another 200 million to the game. then how much is like the Spider-Man games, like around the same price, around the same budget? Like that's ridiculous. Like oh, like they're just spending way too much money on these games, and they don't want to make these other games that might not do so well, or maybe you didn't spend like these like games you want to just like experiment on or whatever. Don't spend so much money on them, and stop spending so much money on your flagship games. Like how is Concord they spent $400 million on that game. You see how that turned out. Yeah, sometimes you probably are gonna get it, but try to just the inflation on these games to publish these games are freaking ridiculous, like outrageous. They're going the route like with same problem with movies too. They're spending so much money on these movies, then like if a lot of these movies, if they don't make like over like a like over like 5 million, like it's a failure. It's like Jesus Christ, like how much, like it's crazy.
To How I Look in 1996. They published 8 games for the PlayStation 5 in 2024. In 96, they published or co-published over 40 games. That's not even their most active year either, and their output's still way higher than what they're doing now. Instead of doing more, all these big game makers are doing less. They're putting their eggs in one basket because they're the games that make them the most money. The rare times we do see them do something different, it's, again, because they're trying to chase a trend. I mentioned this in the first one, but, I mean, it's as applicable here. With Concord, that was a new IP. Yeah, I mean, you could say that contradicts what I'm saying here, but it was also essentially just another hero shooter that Sony scooped up because they wanted to get in on the games as a service bandwagon.
I mean, I didn't get a chance to play Concord, but it didn't look bad. But I just seen like some of the game modes and stuff. Like it was like, what's the word I'm looking for? So like for the ranked mode or whatever, so you pick a character, but after that round you can't pick that character again. That's just stupid. Like some of the decisions they made for this game are just stupid, and the aesthetic for this game doesn't look that good. Like what? This is an assault rifle or whatever, but it looks stupid. It looks stupid. Like not all the characters look stupid, not all the weapons look stupid, but some of it just looks stupid, and some of the decisions they made for the game modes were stupid. That's why I was like, I don't know. I wasn't really in a hurry to give this game a try, cause I don't know.
Going to smoke screen.
That seemed like such a safe investment not long ago. It's hard to get excited about that, And it's not just that they're focusing on popular long-running series. It's also becoming more and more common for AAA games to be based on popular IPs like Star Wars or Marvel. And I'm not even saying these are bad games. It's just that it's hard to get excited about that because, I mean, we've been there. We've done that. Sony used to do weird and wonderful stuff from Japan Studio or Media Molecule. Like, remember Journey? I love Journey. That's such a cool game. And I don't know, nothing like that anymore. Not from, the big publishers anyway. And hell, look at Xbox. It's basically a spiritual successor to Dreamcast, which was like Innovation Central, but I mean, that changed, obviously. Don't see all those odd and interesting games coming out from them anymore. The closest thing was Hi-Fi Rush, and well, it was a success, so naturally, they gave them the boot. I don't care about the financials of these companies. I don't care it's more or less profitable to do one thing or the other. I like video games, and I want more interesting games, and it's disappointing how few of them we get from major publishers anymore.
So Hi-Fi Rush did good, but they still fucking got rid of them. That's ridiculous. I don't get it. Like, why? Why? That's the. I wanted to say something about Anthem, like, because a lot of people. I mean, you may like it, you may not like it. I really liked Anthem, and they had something there, and they just gave up on it so quick. Oh my gosh! Think about if we still would have had Anthem today, and they just kept working on it. I think Anthem would have been one of the biggest looter shooters today. I'm just saying, but EA and BioWare just gave up on it, just threw it away. You know, it had its problems. I'm not saying that it had its problems. Okay, it wasn't perfect, but keep working on it. You know, and don't ban people for you know glitches in your games. Just let it go and fix it. Just saying.
And at number 8, something that's maybe a more realistic expectation, but still something they have left by the wayside for one reason or another. So let's talk about how disappointing the state of day one release games are a lot of the time. Like for more casual players who are just coming into gaming and think, oh, I'm gonna try this out. A lot of people are doing this. My friends, they like games. I'd like to do something with my friends, etc., etc. They buy a game on release day and it's Cyberpunk on release day. It's a big old mess. Or like maybe the server situation's terrible and they throw up their hands and walk away from gaming forever. Now that sucks because obviously the whole point is to bring more people in. That's what, companies want, or at least allegedly want. I don't know. For the rest of us though, we're trapped. We love games. We're constantly frustrated by the state they release in. It's a constant problem in this industry across the board, from the smallest indies to the biggest AAAs. I would say you'll see it with the biggest AAAs, maybe a little more than the smallest indies.
Yeah, these games are not all of them, but a majority of them are always broken when they come out. Oh my gosh, something.
Indies kind of know that their whole reputation is riding on things and often get a little grace because they're a little more apologetic about it. And plus, you understand their situation a little bit more when it's like 2 people making some really ambitious game compared to, 1,000. Release now, fix later. It's just too acceptable as a practice for developers nowadays, though. And gamers are just getting sick of it. It's a situation that is getting better in some ways, but worse in others. Like the entire early access release model is built around fixing it later, but it's a different expectation. In some ways, I find that a lot more acceptable because it's a way of making games that has a lot of positives, but it also has negatives with it. A lot of the best games do start out as early access, but there is a limit to what people expect. But when these multi-billion-dollar companies start calling their games early access, and they're basically finished games that aren't finished games, because that's not how they finish games anymore, I don't like that. An exception to that rule I'm gonna give is Baldur's Gate 3. Larian is kind of a AAA developer, kind of an indie. I'm gonna put them in AAA after Baldur's Gate 3, but they went that route, and honestly, people were fine with it. It resulted in a great game. They listened to feedback. It all worked like how that's supposed to be. That's not what I'm really talking about, though. But the flip side of that, it's even worse when a game comes out as a full release and it is essentially an early access game. They know it's in a horrible state. They put it out for $70 with a $130 special edition with 3 days early access anyways, though. You're paying for the privilege of being a beta tester for everyone who's buying the game 3 months to a year later at a deep discount with all the bugs fixed. Or maybe not. I don't know. Like, at least the standard for PC ports is getting a little better. There are a lot of problems, but compared to the Xbox 360 era, PC ports are generally a lot better. I mean, that wasn't the case maybe a year or so ago, but this year has been pretty all right. I don't want to pretend that I don't understand that games are incredibly difficult and complex to make, but the average consumer wants something that works. They don't really care about a lot of other things, and the way a lot of big AAA publishers put out broken games and barely support them, it's really eroding the average gamer's confidence in the whole industry, and that's really ultimately who matters. And with the new gamers that you want to become that gamer, all it takes is one bad experience for a highly anticipated game, and someone might be out for good. I'll go see a movie. At least they finish those. Note, finished doesn't mean good, but they do finish those. And number 7 is bringing back functional menus. It's a more specific thing, but do we really need these Destiny-style menus in every game? I don't understand developers' fascination with this kind of menu. The only explanation I can think of for why so many people use it is because it's essentially the same on PC and consoles, like making the experience more uniform, but it sucks. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I mean, these games where there's a digital cursor on the menu, so you have to manually drag around stuff and pretend to have a mouse even though you don't, instead of just cycling through options like a regular menu when using a controller. On PC, I guess less irritating because you have a mouse, but everywhere else, you don't. Like, does the act of actually moving the cursor really add anything? It makes stuff take way longer. It's awkward and unnecessary. In comparison to the copycats, the original Destiny menus actually did it a lot better too. So all the things you interact with, they're big, the cursor's fairly fast, and the later copycats did it worse. Like, things got smaller and smaller, the cursor moved slower and slower. It just sucks. So many console games have just given up on menu design. It sucks. I mean, when they used to get creative, you'd see some really bad menus. I mean, Mass Effect Andromeda's menu is not good. But in general, games menus used to be easier to use, and that's really the important thing. The options should be easy to identify, but just with a glance, and it should be fast to use them. A lot of modern games do manage to clear that low bar, but a lot of them don't. Moving on to number 6, just bring back cheat codes already. In a world of achievements and paid time savers, cheat codes are nearly extinct. The only time you ever see them anymore are from games that are intentionally doing some kind of retro throwback, or they're so ingrained in the series if you took them out, fans would riot. Imagine if Bethesda blocked access to the console in Starfield. That would have sucked. They do make it so you can't get achievements if you're using the console, but there are ways around that using mods. Still, it's yet another way that the use of cheats has degraded in modern games, and it's a tough issue to get around because trophies and achievements should be obtained legitimately. That's kind of the point of them, so you're supposed to actually challenge yourself. Still, Retro Achievements has a simple solution for this issue. They mark achievements differently depending on if somebody got a solution for this problem. I just think make it so you can't get them if you're cheating, and let us cheat. The problem is...
Yeah, nobody cares about that. The problem with having cheat codes, every game is like online now. That's the real problem with not having cheat codes and stuff. Like back in the day, what we had, what's one of the biggest games back in the day that had cheat codes? GTA, right? Had cheat codes for a lot of stuff, but back in the day, GTA wasn't online. Well, guess what? Well, what's GTA 5? Well, you have your offline mode, and I'm not sure because I haven't really played GTA 5 in a while, but do they have cheat codes for GTA 5? Like the single player mode? Let me know in the comments, okay? But what if something happens and you can bring those cheat codes into the online mode? Disaster. But I do like cheat codes.
Developers and publishers have
Have
monetized
fun
cheats,
every now and
that
then.
just sucks. There's no excuse for it. Just blatant greed, especially when they're basically selling you cheats in a competitive game, like literally making it so people who pay up get an instant advantage over all the poor chumps who didn't. Usually, it's just a way to reach max level or whatever faster. But depending on the game, like NBA 2K, your player stats make a huge difference in a competitive game, and the people with maxed out stats are just going to have an easier time playing it. The monetization of cheats just makes games worse. It used to be cheating was something you did for fun, and often something that kids relied on to be able to play games before they felt confident enough to play them for real. Now many games, there's no options out there. You either watch your big brother play them or nothing. Cheat codes used to be the grand unifier. They made it so everyone could play and even beat a game. You didn't even have to be a savant or grind away hours of your precious life to do it in, a lot of games that give you a tough time. In some ways, accessibility options are becoming the new cheat codes, at least depending on how powerful they are. The one that really lets you fine-tune the difficulty or make it so you can see collectibles, stuff like that. They're great for people that need them, but you know what accessibility options don't have? Big head mode. So bring back cheats. They weren't fair, but they were fun.
That's the thing, they weren't fair. And like I said, a lot of these games are online, so bringing unfair cheat codes into a game is...
And bringing back trilogies...
Now, if the game is a single player, yes, bring back cheat codes, Don't worry about it. But we got to get past the part where a lot of these games are online. Are they ever gonna, like, he just showed GTA 3 there, big head mode. We're probably never gonna get that, like, cause we all know next GTA game, GTA 6, and it's probably gonna have online mode and blah blah blah, all of this. Like, we just need more single player games that are not online at all. Put some cool cheats on there. Just let us have fun.
That actually come out in a single console generation. The reality of modern AAA game development is that it takes longer, and it's only getting worse. Like, the used to be game series were able to release pretty consistently. Now it feels like sequels are taking about 5 to 10 years. Sometimes worse. There's a reason gaming feels like it's for old people now. It's because you have to be old to remember some of the games. Like, it took 10 years to get a Dragon Age sequel. In that amount of time, the entire original Dragon Age saga came out. All 3 games prior to Veilguard. That's too long for a sequel. And it's not an outlier with these things. This kind of wait for games is getting much more common. For 3 full console generations, we got entire series coming out in just a few years span. All of Naughty Dog's Crash Bandicoot games were out between 96 and 99. The 3 Insomniac Spyro games came out just as rapidly. We got the entire Gears of War trilogy for Xbox 360, the entire Mass Effect trilogy from 2007 to 12, 3 Uncharted games on the PlayStation 3, the entire Resistance trilogy, the list goes on. Now, we know that developers had to crunch like crazy to make these insane production dates, but the problem with modern games is that so many devs feel like they have to completely reinvent the wheel with every new game. And here's the thing, I was complaining a little bit about not innovating, but let's talk about Yakuza. So the Yakuza / Like a Dragon games come out pretty constantly. We get 3 of them in less than a year, and there's another one coming out in 2025. But these games change. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is nothing like the original Yakuza game. But here's the trick. They make games in a way that they're smart about it. They're not afraid to reuse assets like crazy because they tend to not move around in terms of location very much. They definitely improve upon the models and add new things, new mechanics, new story stuff. Like I said, these games change a lot.
I know,
but if you know your way around...
I know a few of them, like the gameplay are like totally different. So yeah, they are smart how they use the same asset. Maybe like, the first 2 games may be like the same combat, and like the third game, totally different combat because they had time to work on it and, tweak that combat system. They're smart. They are smart. I have to say I haven't played none of them. I've seen a lot of gameplay on them, and I do know, like I said, like some of them have different combat systems and everything. But they do come out a lot with a lot of these games.
On Kamurocho, you know your way around Kamurocho. Fans don't complain, though. They embrace it. And the reason for that is these guys are consistently making great stories and great games with the understanding they all come out in a consistent world and they iterate, and there has to be a reason the game exists. More developers need to embrace this design philosophy. It used to be that expansion pack sequel was considered a dirty word, but to be frank, if you do it right, it doesn't have to be. Especially now with the way development time and budgets have completely ballooned out of control. They're able to make yearly games without needing 100 studios working on the same project at the same time, like a Ubisoft game or a Call of Duty. It's a good system for getting their games out there. Capcom isn't above this sort of things either. Their remakes clearly reuse a lot of assets from other games. Like, I think I've seen the same bolt cutting animation in every single one of them. I'm not saying every game should be like the Yakuza series, just that the industry's struggling to keep fans interested in series that take half a decade or more to come out. Oh, and another thing, they don't all have to be 100-hour games. Yakuza's a shining example of that. And yes, sometimes it makes the games feel like less of an event when a new one comes out, but I'll take that over years of absolutely nothing. And if I'm I'm completely honest, I still get excited for every Yakuza. And number 4, bring back split-screen multiplayer and co-op. Couch co-op used to be the de facto way to play games, but it's getting harder and harder to do, even with games that thrive on that sort of play. The recent Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has a local versus mode, but you can only play it on one map, which is essentially a white void, and it sucks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No use.
That is terrible, man. What?
That's far from the only example of a game that used to be all about playing locally, but has more recently shifted to being online only, and that's frustrating. Now, you can't just have a friend come over and screw around for fun. Every game has to be this whole ordeal to get running, and the whole end game is for there to be some sort of competitive scene which can prolong the life of the game and or series. You both have to have copies of it, you both have to set up accounts, navigate multiplayer menus, and so many games do it differently that when you try to join a lobby and someone's connection times out or the headset isn't working, something goes wrong. Or let's say it's a co-op game and you have to go through this lengthy single-player tutorial before you can play together. It's like these games don't want people playing together. And while it is a design problem, it's not just a design problem, it's also a technical problem. Even if those technical hurdles are getting a little easier to deal with, like SSDs and more powerful consoles should make it so mirroring the game world on the screen twice should be possible, but a lot of devs don't want to or can't put in the work. They see couch co-op as not an essential feature, something people online won't complain about per se, but it's a feedback loop because all those online people are playing the game online. They're not the log off types. All their friends and family are probably online, so they don't care about split screen. Or maybe not that many people actually play in the same room anymore. I don't know. I don't have the numbers. Maybe it really isn't a priority, but it still should be. Nintendo at least mostly gets this. Sure, a lot of their games run like crap when it's played by more than one player, but at least you could do it. And number 3, bring back games that are actually worth the asking price. This is a refrain I hear a lot. Games are too expensive. They're not worth the asking price. They should be cheaper like they used to be. It's a complicated problem because the reality isn't quite so clear-cut. Games used to be expensive and generally shorter than we get now, too. Take Chrono Trigger, for example. It took about 20 or so hours to finish back in 1995, and its suggested retail price, get this, was $79.99. And a lot of retailers charged more than that. Some of them were charging $89.99. I mean, that's an extreme example because video game prices generally stabilized when they became disc-based, but still. Most games in the late 90s and early 2000s cost a flat $50 on release, which would be great to have now, but back then wasn't that cheap. Factoring in inflation, those $50 games would cost like $90 now. Not a joke either, look it up. And I'm not trying to say that games should be more expensive because no, they should not. But the problem of price isn't as simple as saying games used to be cheaper. The problem isn't just that they're charging $70 for games now, it's that they're adding all these other expenses on top of that. Nearly every major game that comes out never just costs the retail price. They've also got a digital deluxe edition, a super special ultimate VIP edition, microtransactions, season passes, DLC bundles, currencies to buy, horse armor, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. I like using that joke. Anyway, it's out of control. So take all that nickel and diming and contrast it with the many ways the games industry has gone out of its way to devalue games with like constant deep discounts, Game Pass where you get a whole lot of games for a monthly fee, and free to play where they're basically trained casual gamers to not want to pay to play games, or if they do, they only do it at the steepest possible discounts. And there's no reason.
It's so many factors why games cost so much, and like I was talking about earlier, these games are so expensive to make, so they have to up the price on them. That's one problem, and the cosmetics and stuff, like you said, I mean, that really doesn't factor into like the base price. That's the stuff that is trying to get more money out of you, which if you're going to do that, yes, cut back the price a little. If you're going to have me buy a $60-$70 game, this is just the base version, then in the game, you're going to charge me for skins that are like 15, 20, 30 bucks. No, how about you cut back on that base price for me buying the game? And yeah, I may think about, if the game's good, I may think about spending, that 15, 20, 30 bucks on a skin or whatever. But if I'm coming right out the gate, spending 50, 60, 70, $100 for like the deluxe or whatever special edition version of the game, bro, like I'm not gonna wanna. As soon as I get in the game, there's a store with cool looking skins. Yeah, they may look cool, but I just spent so much money on the game already. I'm not gonna want to buy this. No. And I know I'm not the only one that feels like this because I'm a broke little bitch. I may create content, but guess what? I don't make money on content. All these games I play, yeah, they have to be free or I'm paying for these games. And if I'm playing it early, yes, I'm paying that 120 bucks for that game. So yes, I don't care. Like I don't like these base prices need to be lowered. And how about okay, you don't want to lower it, you can't lower it because what you spent so much money making the game. How about you lower it? You stop spending so much money making these games. These games should not be costing 400,000, 500, half a mil for a game. That's crazy. Like, stop it.
Why they shouldn't, because that's a smart thing to do. It's only the super hardcores, the people who play one game a year, that are spending tons of cash on these bloated special editions, but the end result is that the gap between these two audiences just keeps getting wider and wider. And also, not every game is worth 70 bucks anymore. I mean, take that Suicide Squad game. It's short, it's packed with microtransactions, the open world is small, there just isn't much stuff to actually do in it. It's a live service game selling you on its possibilities rather than what it actually has. Then the game flopped and all those dreams about new content disappeared, so all you're left with is a game where you spent too much money and there's barely anything to do in it. Basically what I'm saying is stop loading up games with unnecessary extra expenses so like you can sell it for $70 and, you know, nobody feels shortchanged. Like the fact that $70 is a base price for a game that's not complete, that's crazy. If you're gonna make us pay that much, give us a completed product that has everything. And number 2 is bring back silence. Modern AAA games talk way too much. They're like those terrible kids movies where nobody ever shuts up because they think if there's a moment of silence, kids are just gonna get bored and tune out. Which, I mean, in some cases is true, but maybe that's your movie's fault rather than the kids. And here's the thing, I'm not talking about kids games either. Like T for teen rated or even mature rated games are played by people who hopefully have more mature or even adult attention spans. We can handle a moment of silence from time to time. We're not literal babies with no object permanence who need to be verbally reminded that someone exists.
I need to play New Horizons.
I'm sure they were nice.
I have it on PlayStation.
Come on. Oh yeah.
You know, otherwise we assume that they're gone forever. We can handle it. I promise. It's not just the nonstop banter either. It's the constant hand-holding. You know, like in any given PlayStation game where you find a puzzle or something, and the characters immediately start dropping hints at what you should be doing.
If I go in this way, they'll destroy all the evidence. I should look for a sneaky way in. There we go. Huh. It's like my own private ventrance.
Like, give me at least a second, game. Let me figure this stuff out on my own. I don't know if their games are just getting focus tested to death or what, but...
Okay, that's understandable with Spider-Man. He talks a lot, he jokes around. That's Spider-Man. No, yeah, they could have probably showed a different game there.
All these clues and reminders and pointing out things in the environment, it's not necessary. And it's infuriating once you really start to notice how non-stop it all is. If a game like High on Life, which is a comedy game where the entire shtick is stream of conscious babbling, can have an option to turn down the frequency of the talking, then your big budget AAA experience could do it too. And finally, at number 1, bring back friction. If you're one of those people who've been playing games for a real long time, this is something you're going to start to notice with every AAA game. All the rough edges have been sanded off. All the odd or fiddly bits are removed. And the game is just made as seamless as possible. All the friction in these games are gone. I don't just mean they're easy. You can have a game that's challenging but lacks friction. Games that have no friction do things like give you big objective markers and waypoints and tell you exactly where to go at every moment. There's never any penalty for failure. There's no frustration frustrating or intentionally stressful bits, like time limits or oddball gameplay mechanics. It's a double-edged sword because in a lot of the ways the games are better. A lot of things that add friction to a game aren't necessarily good, especially on their own, but a lot of the time, if you take these things out, you're left with a more bland, less engaging experience. Now, I'm not talking about like that terrible minigame in the original Dead Space that they thankfully fixed in the remake to not be horrible. You know, the asteroid shooting one? Yeah, that one. I mean, that's an example of friction that it's good that they fixed, but a lot of the time it's not like that. A lot of the time it's something like a puzzle that's not super obvious or a boss that has a trick to it that is actually pretty hard to figure out. These things are also friction, but they're friction done well, and they're really satisfying to get over the hump. The modern AAA gaming landscape is just a little too safe, a little too afraid of frustrating or challenging players in any but the most understood ways. Basically, if it's a Souls thing, then that gets a pass, but everything else doesn't. Like, so you can have hard boss fights, but God forbid, a forced to stealth section. I don't know, maybe that's not the best example, but maybe something like Dead Rising's time limit makes more sense. The first Dead Rising had a lot of
that's
friction.
what I was thinking
There was a time limit and hostages to save who were stupid and helpless, and if you ran out of time, the game was basically over. The only way to continue was to start over. It could be annoying, but it was a unique experience that made the original game something special. They tried to completely remove that central friction in the fourth game by completely eliminating the time limit, and by doing that, they removed the thing that made the game so unique and interesting. It was just another generic open-world zombie game now. It's not that friction is entirely gone for big budget games. I mean, look at Dragon's Dogma 2. They got tons of weird, little potentially frustrating elements to it.
Goblins! What rotten luck! We've need of your aid again, sir.
So not every game is playing it this safe, but there's still way too many that do. What do you think, though? I'm sure you got plenty of things like this going on in your head after listening to my little list. So leave us a comment, let us know.
Yeah, pretty good video. Game Ranks. Give them a like. I like the video. It was pretty good. A lot of thoughts and stuff. Give them a like, subscribe to them. And I'll see you next time. Leave me a like. Subscribe to me and ring that bell for more videos, and leave a comment. Give me your thoughts on things they need to bring back, things that need to change in the AAA game industry. Yeah, see you next time. All right, peace.